Hello everyone, this is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there. Hello everyone, this is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there.
My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family, I'm cloud hired.
So I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glow Cloud team.
Welcome everyone. This is Michael Gibbs, and I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I'm here today to help you build the most elite, best, high-performance cloud computing career. Perhaps you're looking for your first cloud architect job or solution architect job or enterprise architect job or a cloud engineer job. And here's the thing, I can help you, I can guide you, and I can help you to be on your way to get the absolute best, most highest paying, most elite version of that job. See, I've been working in tech now for over 25 years, and I've been coaching or mentoring others to get their first tech job or get promoted in tech for more than 2 decades, and I'm going to help you get cloud hired. There's so much noise that's out there, and on 90% of the information is so wrong and so irrelevant. And that's why I came out of retirement to do this, to get you all cloud hired. Now, almost every day, someone in our class who's never worked in tech gets their first cloud architect job. Other people, certification providers will tell you it's impossible, and here's the reason. Nobody gets these jobs by being uncertified. In fact, nobody gets any tech job based on being certified. They get tech jobs based upon having the right skills, the right qualifications, the right attitude, energy, enthusiasm, presence, communication skills, CXO relevancy, leadership skills, and so many other great things. And that's why I'm here, to guide you. So you know how to take steps. So you don't have to start at the bottom. You can start midway or already close to the top and rise, and rise somewhere. And that's why I do what I do. That's why my students are so successful. And that's why we're a family of highly successful people. And I want to help you. So I'm here 3 times per week, completely free. I do the How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar, completely free. I host the Head in the Cloud show. Like last night, we had Alvin DaCosta, a VP over at NVIDIA, telling you what hiring managers want. And he told you right point blank, I don't care if somebody has a certification. I care if they're competent. He even told you, I don't care if they have experience. I like it if they have it, but I'm more concerned about them being competent. And he told you how much soft skills and communication skills and those things matter to him far more than the tech. Now, he's a VP over at one of the best technology companies, and he and I grew up together. We've coached and mentored together, and that's why I'm here. So if you missed that show, please watch it. But let's talk about the things we can do today. I'm going to be here for 90 minutes. Got some voice issues got to work out, plus I have some other critical things I need to do. So the first thing I want to tell you is get your absolutely free, brand new, updated AWS Certified Solution Architect and Associate Exam Guide. It has the elements of the Certified Solution Architect Associate and the Professional for both brand new exams, and it's yours completely free. Completely free. Now, the next thing I want to tell you is about the free webinar. Tomorrow, on Thursday, we will have our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar, and I will teach you everything you need to know about how to get hired, what hiring managers want, how to leverage your life experience to get hired, how to bypass HR when you don't have experience, and everything you need to do to get hired. Now, the next thing I want to tell you is for the rest of the month, and it's very coming and going very quickly, we're going to have a security discount for Security Awareness Month, and that's 30% off of all of our products and programs. So if you're looking to get hired and you're looking to raise your salary and you don't want to care about the rise in cost due to inflation, take advantage of our 30% off coupon code security and get yourselves cloud hired. So at this point, come and bring me your questions so I can help you reach the absolute best technology career. And before we begin, give me a hashtag cloud hired in the chat box. You may want to follow me on LinkedIn as well, because every day I give you guidance and strategic advice on LinkedIn so you can build the best career. We answer people's questions, and my team will also pop that in the chat box. So bring me your questions and give me a hashtag cloud hired and a hashtag either solution architect, hashtag cloud engineer, or any job you desire. Hi, Pradeep. It's so nice to see you here this morning. Good morning, Eddie. Yes, as Eddie says, bring us your cloud career question. Collins, good morning. Good to see you. And cloud hire. Rock and roll, passed your AWS exam. Congratulations. Thanks for the resources. You are more than welcome. On the way to being cloud hired, but not sure what role you might be interested in. Any suggestions on how to figure that out? Yes, of course, Rock and Rolla. So really the key is, where do you want to be now? And where do you want to be 10 years from now? And what are your real goals? Now, if you're the kind of person that wants a more elite role from the start and a higher earnings from the start, and you like being in front of people, You like talking to people and presenting to people, and you don't want to be glued to the technology, the cloud architect or the solution architect is my absolute favorite job. You can pay double or triple what a cloud engineer can over the time of your career. It's much more likely to get you promoted or move into elite levels of management, for example, because it's a business executive mixed with a technology career. I train a tremendous number of cloud architects and solution architects, and they get hired with or without experience. It doesn't matter. So, for example, Jennifer was hired as a solution architect, and her last job was in mental health tech. Delra was working on ambulances as an EMT, and his first job as a cloud security architect. We trained him. Daniel Bosa was selling shoes at Nordstrom, and he's now working as a solution architect for JP Morgan Chase Bank. Coyote was a college student, now working for AWS. Ivan Tamba was basically a college student working as a waiter serving food, and he's now working for AWS. And Jermaine was selling landscaping equipment, got hired as a solution architect. Balwinder was a stay-at-home mom, and she's now working at Microsoft as a cloud solutions architect. So the point is that you can do any job you want. There's no place you need to start. But if you like the architect job, you're going to be talking to people, buying dinners and drinks, with the corporate credit card, being in meetings, leading large teams, building business cases, talking to executives and C-level executives. And personally, I think it's the best job in the world. I was an engineer first and would not want to go back there, but I love being an architect. Now, by comparison, if you want to be a hands-on techie, if you're the kind of person that doesn't like to talk to people, you like to be behind the computer and just type on your keyboard all day, well, the cloud engineer is your job then. Now, the cloud engineer is still, and none of these information rock and roll is actually covered in certification. I'm going to tell you that right now. Now, the cloud engineer is a different person. While the cloud architect designs, presents, and sells and does not touch the technology, I mean, we write Word documents and Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints as architects. The cloud engineers are a deep hands-on techie. Now, the cloud engineer is going to be hands-on configuring servers all day long to the point where they pretty much need to be a Linux engineer. Now, the next thing that we're going to be talking about with regards to the cloud engineer is they're going to be building stuff. And they're not going to be building it on the management console like you're taught in the certification. They're going to be building things with Terraform infrastructure as code, the command line. They're going to be writing Python scripts and Bash scripts to deploy certain things and automate certain things. So for the cloud engineer, they're going to be behind the desk all day long. Not only are they behind the desk, they're going to be coding, they're going to be configuring, they're going to be working on Linux. So that cloud engineer needs the following. That cloud engineer needs excellent hands-on Linux skills, excellent infrastructure as code skills, that means Terraform, excellent scripting skills in terms of Bash and Python, and they really need to be hands-on, hands-on, hands-on. Now, rock and roll, the other thing that I would tell you is to look at what's going on globally and in the economy. In economic downturns, we hire more sales reps and we hire more architects, and here's the reason why. We hire people because a guy like me as an architect can go meet with a client, talk about their business, find a strategy to improve their business, and then sell $1 billion cloud solution. And I bring in $1 billion cloud solution, my company can pay me everything, and they're never going to get rid of me in a down economy. Now, by comparison, a cloud engineer is an expense. You got to remember that engineers are expensive. People that are in sales, we're loved because we bring in the money. Engineers are expensive. Now, in engineering, it's critical to have engineers, but it doesn't matter where they live. So in a down economy or a recession, I'm still hiring architects, but I'm going to lay off my engineers in my more expensive countries. I'm going to outsource it and hire people in less expensive countries. Because, it doesn't matter what you pay someone, it's what relationship is between the money and the standard of living. And in some parts of the world, $30,000 is a lot of money to live on. And in other parts of the world, $150,000 is not enough to live in based on the cities and taxes and real estate costs and real estate. So, architect jobs tend to be localized, although you can still get remote architect jobs. Engineering jobs can be outsourced. So, think about your future opportunities. As engineering, your opportunities are more limited because people see you as a techie. And the techies often don't make it to the top because the world views them as focused on the tech. Now, the architects are focused on business transformation, so they naturally move into much bigger roles that tend to pay much more. And that's, why architects often have much more career advancement. But rock and roll, here's the thing. It can never be based on what pays you more or what gives you more career advancement. There are things for you to consider. It's what's going to make you happy. And there's other jobs and roles that you could do. Now, rock and roll, you're going to have to learn the skills for these jobs. And if you tell us which job you want, then we can tell you all the things that you need to learn. But it's about figuring what's going to make you happy. I was an engineer first. And let me tell you, I didn't like being in the data center at 2 o'clock in the morning, fixing stuff, because that's what engineers do. They fix things, in the middle of the night when things aren't broken. The architects, by comparison, in my job, I was going to talk to somebody, buying them lunch on a corporate American Express, playing golf with them, and closing a deal. So rock and roll, it's all based upon your personality. What makes you happy? What makes you tick? You tell me that, I'll give you some guidance. Great question, by the way. And congratulations on passing the exam. It's a great start. Great start. Chris, we can bring in the next one. Collins, it's good to see you, Cloud Hire. Benjamin Smith. I know you've talked about how architects and engineers are different roles, but what skills can an engineer adaptivize to be an architect? So Benjamin Smith, if you're an engineer, you're going to be completely retrained to be an architect. And here's the reason. And we retrain engineers constantly, and we constantly get engineers hired as cloud architects for our cloud architect career development program. So you have to understand the difference between the roles. As a cloud architect, my focus is making my customer's business more profitable. As a cloud engineer, my focus is the tech, how to make the tech work. So it's basically like going from a nurse to a doctor. They're completely different jobs, both equally important. The doctor builds the plan, and the nurse carries out that plan. So they're that difference. Or an airplane pilot who's flying the plane versus an airplane mechanic who's fixing the plane, which is much more in line with the engineer role. So what you have to do is this following. The first thing you need to realize is you're going to have to leave your engineering past behind. And yes, I had to do it, and it was traumatic for me, and it always will be. You got to pretty much forget about your engineering past while taking the lessons learned. Now, as an architect, your focus is on business, and your focus is on system design, presentations of systems, and selling these systems. As an engineer, it's about coding, configuring, and doing the hands-on work. We don't ever touch the technology, Benjamin, as architects. So the most critical skills for the architect are actually non-technical. And then I will go into the technical skills. Now, as architects, most people would call it 80% business, 20% tech. I like to call it 50-50, and I like to over-prepare my people in tech, specifically so they can get hired. But these are the architect skills that you're going to need to learn. And the easiest way to do this is in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. Alternative ways, I'll tell you how to do it, but it's going to cost you $30,000 to $60,000 of the training to do it on your own. I don't care how you do it, I just want you to get hired. So as an architect, if your main goal is to improve companies' business performance, what do you need to know a lot about? You need to know a lot about how to improve customers' business performance. So let's talk about what that means. So first, you need a level of business knowledge or business acumen. How does a business make money? What does top-line revenue mean? What is EBITDA? What is next income? And being able to read those financial statements and balance sheets. Because if you can't do that, you can't optimize the business. Now, as an architect, we need to be able to do some research, see what industry analysts are doing, see what competitors are doing, and then there's that. Now, as an architect, we're going to be talking to the CEO and the CFO and the CIO and the CTO, and they're going to tell us what they need. So we have to learn and train people how to get CXO relevancy training. I can tell you right now, I had between $10,000 and $20,000 leaving engineering on CXO relevancy training. Now, I teach that in our program because most people can't afford that, but I'm telling you that's what I had to do. Now, once you get out of that, it's all about developing your executive presence. When I was an engineer, I'd be talking about BGP as a path vector routing protocol that's used for interdomain routing, and it was a snooze fest to anybody that was in the senior leadership. What I had to learn and change was something called executive presence, and I had about $10,000 to $20,000 of training for this too, and I trained my students in this. And executive presence is being able to make it come alive. And BGP is a path vector routing protocol that's used for interdomain routing, and it feels different. And I didn't change much, but there was a lot of subtle differences in the communication. Now, Benjamin Smith, 55% of our communication is what we look like when we say something, 38% is what we sound like, and 7% is the actual content. So it's a difference of making your message 10 times stronger to the executives that are going to write the check for your solution. Now, Benjamin, the next key component moving up in the stack about how to become an architect is the ability to communicate. Now in engineering, I'm going to hand somebody a picture, I'm going to hand them a document, and they're going to know what to build. Now as architects, nobody gives us a piece of paper at all. We got to go talk to the customer, talk to the executives, talk to the department heads, talk to the leadership, talk to the engineers on the floor, and figure out what are the business problems, the business processes, and challenges. So communication skills are the most critical skill for the actual architect. But it's also listening skills, how quickly we can take attention. Now, Benjamin Smith, as an architect, we are going to be writing and responding to requests for information, requests for proposals, requests for quotes or queries, so RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, and we're dealing with this. Guess what else we're going to be dealing with? Writing, and more writing. So for the architect, you need executive writing skills. Now, and it can't look like engineering writing. It's got to be a specific writing written in a certain way, special way. Now, presentation skills. Now, we have to change this completely. Engineers, if you watch them give a presentation, will do the following. They'll tell you the problem, and oh, by the way, here's the cool solution. Now, business people are asleep within the first 30 seconds of that discussion, and they never come back. And I've seen engineers get kicked out of executive offices and fired for even trying to do this. It's sad because they're some of the best, most technical people in the room. Now, architects and management consultants and sales executives present the solution and then the substantiating evidence and what impact it's going to make to the business. So it's never about the technology, Benjamin Smith, for architects, never, ever. It's always about the business impact we can make to our customers. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. You're going to need presentation skills training. And again, when I left engineering to architecture, I had $15,000 plus of presentation skills training, plus writing training, another $10,000 plus of that. So, we're talking about some serious money, which is why I created the Cloud Architect Career Development Program, because most people couldn't afford it, and I want to get the world cloud hired. Now, when we leave this role, remember, we're going to be working at conferences, and we're going to be writing thought leadership documents and white papers to influence the industry. So that's exactly how much polish you're going to need to have this. Whether you'll be presenting at a conference, presenting on panels, working at conference booths, that's really your role. Now, Benjamin, when we go to our customer and they say, I want all this stuff as an architect, no one person would even know how to deal with this. So as an architect, we need to go back to our company and build a team, which means to convincing the management that I need these 15 people that each cost $200,000 a year for the next 6 months to help me design something and do a proof of concept. So that means building a business case to justify why you need these people and selling it to the internal management. Now, you're also going to be designing a solution that may cost $500 million, and you're going to have to present that and sell it back to the customer, which means you need the ability to create something called a return on investment capital model and build a business case to show the customer that by buying your solution, it's going to make them money versus cost them money. So, right now, that's half of this. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, just those things I have over $100,000 of training in. But just that. And thankfully, the companies paid for most of them because they wanted me to have it, because they knew going from engineering to architecture, I needed those skills. Now, the next thing is the actual tech piece of this, which is going to be different, Benjamin. As engineers, as a rule, we're hands-on on technology. I once was an engineer. And engineering is more about how to do. Now, architecture is more how to design. So I like to think of engineers as the cloud construction crew. And the training needs to be different. So if you were a building architect and you wanted to design a big, beautiful office building in London, you need to know what the building's going to look like, how tall it can be, what the weather's going to be like, is there wind going to sway the building? You need to know what it's going to look like and all the pieces and things you want in a special building. Is it going to be a green building? Is it going to be a tall building? So building architects focus on that. Construction workers focus on their hammers, their nails, and their tools. And engineers are focused on the tech. We architects are focused on the design. So you have to be retrained, because if you've been an engineer first, you know how to build. But knowing how to build versus how to design are completely opposite. You'll need architecture training. And architecture training is about two things. It's about how the technology works, how to integrate the technology together, and how to integrate the technology together in a manner that improves business performance. Now, when we look at cloud, what are we really looking at? Because I worked on a cloud since 1996. then it was frame relay, then ATM. A cloud is nothing more than somebody else's network and data center. That's it. It's kind of like a hotel, where the cloud is the hotel and your VPC or your VNet is like a hotel room inside of that. But what are we designing and what are we doing as architects? We're taking that stuff, that network and data center stuff from the physical network and migrating it to the cloud, which is a virtual network. So when we do that, what are we talking about? Well, I'll tell you right now. We're talking about BGP and how to design it, not how to configure it. We're talking about interior gateway protocols like OSPF because they're necessary for interior BGP. We're talking about knowing how to build the IP addressing plan for the system of a company that's got 20,000 remote locations. Now, in these kind of things, keep that in the back of your mind. We're talking about hierarchical IP addressing design, because if your IP addressing is wrong, what happens is the routing is wrong, the traffic loads and the traffic is not engineered properly, and the systems come to a screeching halt and crash. Kind of like a city that's built with the wrong kind of streets where the population overgrew the city's capability. Now, with that, we're also going to need to determining wide area networks, which means understanding of knowledge of when to use a VPN, whether it be an SSL VPN or an IPsec VPN versus a private line versus an Ethernet over MPLS version of a private line versus a software-defined networking solution versus a SASE solution. And next on the list, we're talking about some switching protocols, which means VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, link bundling, like link aggregation groups. It involves knowing of how to tune DNS and what changes you need to make with GHCP, how to tunnel things through the cloud that they don't support, like IP multicast with GRE tunneling. Now on the data center side, it's about huge knowledge of servers and server virtualization and containers and container orchestration and block storage and object storage and file storage, and not the kind of nonsense that's taught in a certified solution architect professional. I mean real depth, because you can't architect what you don't know. And what's in the certified solution architect professional is way, way, way too basic for pretty much anything. When you get beyond that, you're talking about things like databases and relational databases and NoSQL databases and which ones to use, and pretty much what's taught in your certifications are not the ones you're going to be using, because in most cases, the serverless proprietary stuff locked you into a single cloud, and 80% of customers use more than one cloud. And then it's understanding the applications to use that are going to impact business performance. And that means what's the CRM system do versus a unified communication system versus an ERP system, and how do we use these in combination with process reengineering to make that business more important. And of course, it's going to come to security. Now, nobody's going to, in serious, is going to use the security stuff that's taught in a certification course. They're going to need better tools, next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS, VPN concentrators, and really cool things to architect in it. So it's knowledge of how to integrate them. Those are the kind of skills that are necessary to be an architect. So you could take our training, and we're going to teach it all in a single place, or you could get an MBA. And in addition to the MBA, get some CXO relevancy training, some sales training, some executive presence training, some leadership training, some business writing training, which is exactly the opposite taught in your MBA. And Benjamin, I did both. I mean, I did an MBA, and I had another master's degree from something else, but I did an MBA. And then I took all these other managerial and leadership trainings. And you can do it either case, Benjamin, but it's a complete and total career shift. Kind of like going from an airplane mechanic to a pilot. Now, Benjamin Smith, the good news is if you're an engineer, you're going to have good knowledge of how the tech works, better than a lot of the architects will, which in some ways can be an advantage. Now, it's a disadvantage, Benjamin, if your focus is on the tech and not the business. Because if your whole job and your whole point is to do digital transformation, your whole focus is the tech, it makes you a great engineer but a horrible architect. But if you can take those lessons learned from the time that you spent working in the tech and remember the tech and then forget about configuring it or thinking about any of those things, but apply it once you get all these business skills, now you're an exceptional architect. And that was my path. So I hope I helped you understand the difference between these roles and why they're so different, and why you can't just go from engineer to architect as a general rule without substantial training. Just like you can't go from an architect to an engineer without substantial training, because a nurse and a pharmacist have a different job, and therefore they need different training. Great question from Benjamin Smith. And Chris, let's go to the next question. Let me have a little bit of water first for my sore throat. Pretty deep. On the way to be cloud hired, I'm a beginner without having any cloud course or certification. You want to make a career in the cloud, so where do you start? You want to get a cloud job. Well, Pradeep, the first thing you have to do is figuring out what cloud job you even want, because every job requires different skills. Now, personally, I train cloud architects, and we're real good at getting cloud architects hired. And if you wanted to become a cloud architect, you could take our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. We assume everybody's a beginner. And even when someone's have an engineering background, it's such a different job that we have to start them as if they were a beginner anyway. Now, we can leverage their past experience, so it doesn't matter. Pradeep, if I told you that my first job was practicing internal medicine, I was a nurse practitioner and I had my own internal medicine office, and then my next job was a senior network engineer, and within 5 months, I was a lead architect. So it doesn't matter what your background is. Your past does not define your future. Every day I get someone, almost every day, that's never worked in tech, their first solution architect job or first cloud architect job. So if you wanted to become a solution architect or a cloud architect, our course, the Cloud Architect Career Development Program, specifically the live course, would be best for you. Now, either course would work, but if you have no background experience in that live course, I'm going to get to talk to you and teach you live, engage you live, and guide you live. It's going to be a much better experience for you. But in either option, the basic or live, you could do that. Now, if you wanted a different career, well, then in a different career, there would be different things to learn. So you have to first identify your career, and then you're going to need training. Now, Pradeep, I'm going to tell you right now, certifications are never going to get you hired. I'm going to say it again, certifications are never going to get you hired. In fact, it's so critical, I'll say it again. Certifications will never, ever get you hired. Last night, we had my good friend Alvin, and Alvin's from Goa, somewhere along the line. And, I've interviewed thousands of hiring managers and recruiters over the last 20 years. And here's what they tell me: Mike, I don't care at all about certifications. I care, can the person do the job? And he said, look, everybody manager said, I prefer experience, but you know what? I prefer competency or the ability to do the job over experience, which is why we're so good at getting people hired. Now, most managers, when you talk to them, will say, look, that tech piece, the competency, is only 40, 50% of the thing. What I really need is someone that has this, and this. Now, Pradeep, what are those this, and this things? Well, they are your emotional intelligence, your soft skills, your leadership capabilities, your honesty, your integrity, and trustworthiness. And trust me, when the interview, here's a chance to prove it or disprove it. Most people lie on an interview and the interview is over. And then after that, it's your sales skills. Can you sell yourself in that position? Does the hiring manager feel that you're willing to go above and beyond? Are you a good team player? And can you communicate well? And are you likable? Will you raise the energy on the team, which is your emotional intelligence? And will you destroy the room and the energy in the team if you're a negative person? Because employers don't want negative people. So my recommendation is the following. Attend our free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar tomorrow. And I will tell you for about an hour everything you need to learn to become a cloud architect from scratch. And if you desire to be a cloud architect, we can train you better, faster, and cheaper than anybody else in the world. Why? Because I know what it costs to become a really good architect. And I know that we charge about 5% of what it would really take to do the job, because I don't need to work. This is a passion project of mine. I saw all the certification courses, which were nonsense and irrelevant. I didn't want anybody to ever take that or pay for it, because it would train them in the wrong skills. And that's why we do our certification training free on the internet, on YouTube, just to make sure people don't take that time, because that stuff is so bad. We want people to understand the technology and give them as much help as we can. But to go from certified to hired, that's what we do. And that's what we teach. Of course, we also get people certified as well. So to make a career, the first thing you need to know is, what is that career? Do you want to be a software developer? That's a different career over a big data person, which is a different career over a cloud engineer, which is a different career over a DevOps engineer, which is a different career than a cloud network engineer, which is a different career than a cloud security architect. So first you got to know the goal, because otherwise it's like, which airplane do I get on an airport? Well, I don't know. Do you want to go to Brisbane? Do you want to go to Cape Town? Do you want to go to Delhi? Do you want to go to Mumbai? Do you want to go to Bangalore? Do you want to go to New York? Do you want to go to Athens, Greece, where my family's from? Or Tel Aviv? You got to know where you want to go. So the first part is picking the career you desire. And the second part is mastering those skills. Now, next is the certification piece. I've gotten people cloud security architect jobs that have 0 cloud certifications whatsoever and cloud architect jobs with 0. Now, certifications are good. They can help you get an interview, but they will never get you hired. It's all about what skills you need. What skills. So skills and competency over certifications any day of the week. Now, come to the webinar. We'll tell you which certifications we recommend for the cloud architect. And mind you, it's only going to be 2, and only one of them is going to be in the cloud. But those certifications alone are nothing. It's the competency and the being trained to prepare for the job that are everything. Certifications are like the icing on the cake. Now, I don't eat cake, but people that do eat cake tell me a cake is real good, but they put icing on the top and it makes the cake better. But they don't eat just the icing without the cake. Certifications are like icing. You need the cake. So when you know the career, you know what the cake is, all those skills. Join me tomorrow on the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. I'll tell you how to do it as a cloud architect. And if you're more interested as a cloud architect, Pradeep, which isn't my area of expertise, although I know how to coach people into any of these positions or most of them, ask now and I'll give you more information. But we need to know which job you want. Good question. Cameron Gunn, Cloud Hired, good to see you. Cameron Gunn, what are the baseline skills certifications required to become a cloud security architect? Well, I'm going to skip the certifications piece because I'm going to tell you how irrelevant that is. No one will ever hire you with regards to certifications. And we have Delroy Batt that got hired with 0 certifications and 0 experience as a cloud security architect. He had 3 offers, accepted one of them, and he gets bombarded with big cloud security architect offers every single day. Now, I will tell you there are 2 certifications that will help you get an interview, but they won't help you get hired. Those 2 certifications are the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional or the Azure Solutions Architect Expert. Only get one of the 2. And then the CISSP is a relatively deep, or not deep, but it's a relatively good security certification. Well, don't waste your time on a Security Plus. Don't do any silly AWS Advanced Networking. They're not even an intro to junior level security, anything. Don't do the CCSP, which is basically the cloud version of the CISSP. Do the CISSP instead. And here's the reason. It's a bigger security portfolio. It'll cover hybrid clouds, private clouds, networks, data centers, and everything you need to know. Because nobody wants somebody that only knows cloud. They want somebody that knows how to take the stuff from the networking data center and the cloud, and especially because you're going to be dealing with a lot of hybrid clouds and a lot of hybrid multi-cloud. Now, when it comes to the architect security, the first thing you need to understand is without business, you're not an architect, you're an engineer. So, we're talking about business acumen and communication skills and leadership skills and sales skills and executive presence, the ability to build a business case, because you're going to have to do that even as a cloud security architect, the ability to present it in front of an audience, emotional intelligence, executive presence, and CXO relevancy. All those are architect jobs. Without that, you can't get hired at all. Now, on the tech side, you still need to know the cloud. But what you really need to understand is the following. Nobody's going to use any of these things that are taught in their certifications. They're not what we do in enterprise security, and a cloud security architect will never deal with that. Our cloud security architects will have to understand next generation firewalls and intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems, and VPN concentrators and IDS IPS systems, and encryption strategies, whether it's encrypting a WAN or encrypting storage or any of those. Now, when we're dealing with cloud security architects, we're talking about knowledge of how to write a security policy for the organization, helping an organization develop incident response procedures. So if something happens, who gets called? Legal gets called, PR gets called, which security people get called. Now, that's a big part of the job. It's also understanding various ways to micro-segment. Now, Cameron will never, ever be as secure in the cloud as we can be in the data center. There's lots of reasons why. So when it comes to the cloud, we're going to work really, really hard to get the cloud almost as secure as the data center. And whether that means creating 1,000 VPCs and micro-segmenting the systems, and we're dealing with these kind of things. So then, you're going to be thinking about what kind of training is needed for the personnel, anti-phishing, anti-malware, anti-social engineering campaigns. And then you're going to be thinking about data loss prevention strategies and how to keep the organization from losing their data. And then you're going to be talking about event correlation. It's called SEAM. In other words, you're going to be getting logs from everything, and how do you correlate the event logs to go see if you can find a problem before others notify it, and what you can do to remediate the problems. Now, you can see these are all business skills and/or tech skills. And then it's identification of common threats and knowledge of common threats and knowledge of common exploits and knowledge of attack vectors and knowledge of the tools hackers use to hack into systems so you can go mitigate these things. It involves knowledge of how to lock down an operating system and what an access control list and various firewalls and IDS and IPS systems. And I talked about the main ones, but now we're talking about the host-based side too. So those are the kind of skills that are needed to be a cloud security architect, Cameron. Note, none of that's taught in certification. Now, you can call Cisco and talk to them about their security solutions. I do as a cloud architect all the time. I call Palo Alto and Fortinet and Checkpoint. And as an architect, we're going to be working with that kind of technology too, so we can call these companies and get their areas of expertise to guide us. But those are the kind of things that we're dealing with as a cloud security architect. Business mostly, and all that deep security knowledge of why and how to protect and how to design. But Cameron Gunn, we're not going to be touching the tech as an architect. We're not going to be configuring the firewalls or access controllers. It's telling the people what they need to implement. That's what we do. Great question. Harry, you're more than welcome. Up and up, good morning, everyone. You got this? Yes, everybody can do it. Up and up. In the most recent email from the job you're interviewing with, it says compensation is predetermined and standard for all offers is not negotiable. Does that mean you should not negotiate at all? Yes. If it says compensation is predetermined and all offers are not negotiable, and you try to negotiate, it will end. It's kind of like when someone calls the university and tries to haggle with them on prices, and the university would say, just go away. We don't want you as a student. Or any educational institution, when people get pricing, we're like, yeah, I'm willing to pay this. And the companies are like, no, you're disrespectful to us and you're not respecting our things. So, if it says non-negotiable, do not try to negotiate it. Most things are negotiable, but if it specifically says not negotiable, do not try and negotiate. It will literally crush it right then and there. Because it's going to be, the perspective is going to be like, look, we told you it's not negotiable. What do you think we are, a flea market where you can haggle over some things? And then don't do that. Let's move to the next question. Great question, Up and Up. You always have great questions. Benjamin Smith, thanks, Mike, for explanation, Cloud Hard. Benjamin Smith, so happy to help. And that's why I want to do this, because I love engineers and I love architects. And here's the thing. We architects are nothing without the engineers. Here's why. We'll have beautiful PowerPoint slides, beautiful Excel spreadsheets, and beautiful documents. It's those magical engineers that bring it to life. So I love engineers. Effectively, we're married. Architects and engineers were together. We architects ask engineers for intricate depth to help us even design stuff. So they're both equally critical positions, but they're so different. And where people want to become architects and they learn engineering, they obviously can't get hired. And when people want to be engineers and they focus on the tech, they wonder why they can't get hired as architects. And I just want you to know, because I changed from engineering to architecting. You can do it, and I've helped countless people do. And when we do that, engineers that become architects earn even more if they have experience. Now, architects will get there with a couple of years' experience. So thrilled I was able to help Benjamin. If you've got some questions, please ask them so I can help you get to your goals. I've got some more time, not a lot of time, but a little bit more time, and I'd love to be able to help you get cloud hired and direct you in the exact right direction. Kishore K, you're planning to be a cloud professional. Well, I don't know what that means, so we're going to ask you more about that. But you're confused with various terms like Terraform, Kubernetes, Python, cybersecurity, and Linux. Do I need to any one of this? I'm new here. Well, Kishore, it depends on the job you want. DevOps itself is its own career. It's kind of merging software development with operations at the same time. It looks like DevOps is going away, and there's a new career called SRE, or Site Reliability Engineering, which is going to be the new DevOps. See, what the goal was, we're going to merge software engineering and operations into a single career and eliminate silos, but it didn't actually work. But DevOps people, and DevOps is its own career. Now, Terraform is basically something called infrastructure as code. Now, for example, what's taught in, a solution architect, associate, and professional is how to configure the thing on the management console and command line. But nobody's going to use the management console in the real world. We're going to have a software developer, specifically a DevOps engineer, write the commands effectively in a code language directly in some software like Terraform, and he can literally deploy, things that would take hundreds of hours to do manually in about 30 seconds. So Terraform is a tool used by DevOps engineers and cloud engineers. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you wanted to be a cloud architect, Kishore, Terraform and DevOps are not skills that are valuable to you. Not at all. They're somebody else's career. Now, Kubernetes is a container orchestration platform. Now, your knowledge of Kubernetes is going to be dependent upon your career. As an architect, we design systems in the network and the data center. And Kubernetes is a critical system for architects to design, because we're either going to host our things on virtual machines or we're going to host them on containers. And if they're going to be hosted on containers, our designs will include Kubernetes. But, the knowledge of Kubernetes for an architect is how to design the system. The knowledge of Kubernetes for a DevOps engineer is a critical component of their job, because they're going to be deploying a tremendous number of Kubernetes clusters. The cloud engineer is also going to be working with Kubernetes, so they're going to have to be hands-on there. So cloud architect, we're never going to touch this stuff. And we need to understand how to architect on it. Cloud engineer needs to be involved in doing this. DevOps engineer needs to be involved in doing this. So the skills are necessary are there. There's no such thing as a cloud professional. There's cloud architects, there's cloud engineers, there's sysops people, which are maintenance people, DevOps people, software developers, same jobs on the cloud that were off the cloud. Now, Python is a coding language that's used to automate things. So guess what? Architects, Python is a completely irrelevant skill. Cloud engineers that automate, it's a very relevant skill. Software developers, it's a critical skill. DevOps engineers, it's a critical skill. So it's all dependent upon which career you want. Now, cybersecurity is about how do you secure your systems. Now, a DevOps engineer is not going to be working with cybersecurity. Neither is a software developer for the most part. They'll do a little bit about it. But an architect is going to be critical, making sure the systems are secure. And an architect will need to know a lot about cybersecurity, as well as a cloud security architect, as well as a cloud security engineer. So it's, again, based on different careers. Now, Linux is an operating system. Most technically, it's a packet. It's a kernel, not an operating system, but most people consider it an operating system, and it's the most common operating system of servers on the internet. Now, we architects don't touch Linux, ever. We just need to understand that, the way Linux works, because we need to know that most applications will be deployed on Linux. Now, a cloud engineer is going to be hands-on on Linux all day because they're building this stuff. A DevOps engineer is going to be hands-on on Linux. A Linux engineer is going to be hands-on Linux all day. A sysadmin is going to be hands-on Linux all day. So basically what you've asked me is about 5 different careers. And each career needs a different set of skill sets. So Kishore, the question I would ask you is, what do you want to do in your life? And then we can figure out which skills you need to learn. Because if you wanted to be a doctor, you need a certain set of skills. If you wanted to be a pharmacist, you need a different set of skills, or a physical therapist. Well, in the cloud, it's the same way. There's hundreds of different kinds of jobs on the cloud. So there's a professional. What's a professional? Professional just means professional. It's a meaningless term. And the question is, what do you want to be? That's the key. Architect, design, present, and sell. Cloud engineer, go build the stuff that the cloud architect designs, presents, and sell. DevOps engineer, kind of a software/operation/automation engineer. Big data people do something else. Machine learning people do something else. So I hope I gave you a little bit of clarity. If you want to join us in the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar tomorrow, which is completely free, and please do so. The link is in the chat box in the description below, and we'll tell you about the cloud architect career. But, Kishore, if you were going to get on an airplane, which is kind of what you just asked me, and you said, which airplane should I get on? And do I need to know the airplanes? It's all about, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Cameroon? Do you want to go to Cape Town? Do you want to go to Chicago? Do you want to go to the Cayman Islands? Do you want to go to Cambodia? And in order to get to the right destination, you need to know your destination, and then you can get on the right airplane. So keep hanging around, Kishore. I always go over different careers. Watch other people ask questions about different careers, and I think you're going to need to learn a lot of that. And please attend our How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar, because I want to do anything I can to help you get to your goals. Chris, let's go to the next one.
So the next one is in response to a question from earlier.
Okay.
From Pradeep.
Thanks, Mike. You need a cloud architect job? Well, Pradeep, we can easily help you get your first cloud architect job with our cloud architect career development program. You can also attend tomorrow's live and free webinar on Zoom, and you can learn so much about it. And about the career, how to get the career, how to get there with us, and even how to get there on your own. I will be honored and thrilled to help you. I can tell you that our program is the best, fastest, and cheapest way to do it, but I'm going to let you know how to do it no matter what. UVision, which has a higher salary, DevOps or Cloud Architect? UVision, they're not even in the same universe. Engineer is very low paying compared to architect jobs, and here's the reason why. We can deal with architects that earn 2 to 3 times more than DevOps engineers at the elite level. So UVision, I want you to understand this. Anytime you bring in money to your company, they pay you a lot more. And anytime you have better communication skills, soft skills, leadership skills, executive presence skills, they pay you a lot more. Now, I know how to get engineers to make more money too, and I've helped other engineers get another $50,000 to $100,000 or more per year through the right training. And guess what the key is? It's never the tech. It's never the tech. So EU, what really determines your pay is as following: your actual competency in the job. Whether you bring in money like an architect or you cost money like an engineer, when you bring in money, when you're in sales, you will always get paid much more than the engineers. And we're not talking like a little bit more, we're talking about a lot of it. We can deal with a DevOps engineer that's getting paid $130,000 and a cloud architect that's earning $400,000 a year, and that's not that uncommon. It's a higher level architect like me that can earn that plus some, where the DevOps engineers aren't going to go there. Now, the reason I can earn more is, I can work for my company. I can go talk to a company. I can design a solution for that company, bring in $500 million to my company, and then my company can go hire a bunch of DevOps engineers. But the DevOps engineers are a salary that the company pays that costs the company money, where me as an architect, I'm bringing in the business, bringing home the bacon. So effectively, the company will pay me much more to do that. Now, while we're here, what really determines your salary? If I told you that soft skills on average raise a person's salary by 30% on average, and when you're dealing with an architect who is average salary, and we're not talking high end, we're talking average is about $160,000 a year. When you train them in better soft skills like I do, and I train more than just soft skills, but just training soft skills can give them a $60,000 range and to get them paid over $200,000 a year. Now, when we're dealing with engineers, we can still give them another $50,000 plus in their career by training them in soft skills. And I've done it again and again. There's an engineer that I worked with. He was getting hammered at his job. I helped him have a conversation with his manager. He got about $60,000 in stock grants and a $50,000 per year raise. About a year later, he was struggling in the same position. I gave him a lot of my coaching on soft skills and leadership principles. That got him another $50,000 raise and a huge stock grant, bigger than I even want to admit here. So it's that combination. We can make make money by training the right skills and tuning the executive communication skills. And that's why I have my Tech Career Accelerator program for engineers that want to earn more money in tech, for example. But really, when you bring in money, you're always going to get put more of that. And it's also your focus. So an architect focuses on improving your customer's business. So when you're dealing with an architect that could be billed out at $400 to $600 an hour, just like any other management consultant to the customers, if a customer wanted to pay for architecture work, and you're dealing with an engineer that they could ballot for $100 an hour, we're dealing with a totally different skill set. So when it comes to any technology career, the closer you are to the customer, the closer you are to the money, by far, the more you're actually going to get paid. And we're not just talking about a little bit, we're talking about a lot. So hope I answered your question there. But you, Vision, I'm going to tell you this. You can make money at any job. At any job. I know people that have food trucks where they're serving Greek food like gyros that are earning a couple $100,000 a year. I know artists that are getting paid a lot and artists that are struggling. What's really going to determine how well you do in either one of these things is how much you like it, how hard you're willing to work, and how focused you are at being the best. What your communication skills are, your leadership skills are, your executive presence, your emotional intelligence, and your soft skills, and your attitude, and how willing you are to go above and beyond, and what kind of team player you are. So you can do well with either. And we've got lots of performance tuning we can do with either salary, but architect roles almost always pay far more than engineering roles. And architect roles are more in demand during times of recession because architects bring in money. So I hope I answered your question. Ask us your questions. I have a little bit more time and I want to do what I can to help you. Don't be shy. Up and up. Well, that's good to know. Thanks so much, Mike. Up and up. You are so welcome. Elizabeth James, what are some of the things that one should post on LinkedIn? Well, Elizabeth James, it depends on your career. And that's really the key. It's going to depend on your career. Now, Elizabeth James, if we're talking about an architect, we're not going to post things on how to configure something because architects don't configure. And for example, someone asked me, they said, look, I want to write about VMware as an architect. And I said, why? And she said, it's transformational. I said, you mean back in 1999 when VMware came out there? And I love VMware, by the way. And she says, no, I want to make it on VMware on AWS. And I said, what about it? And she says, the tech. I said, you want to be an architect? No one cares. And she's like, what do you mean no one cares? Now I said, no, if you write this paper by using VMware on the AWS cloud, it enables organizations to not need to learn new cloud technologies. Effectively, they can use those same VMware technologies in the AWS cloud and leverage cloud services by using a familiar interface. I said, now we're talking. I said, if you want to talk about the ability to migrate your virtual machines to the cloud without tuning, modifying, or changing them along the way, now we're talking. I said there, now if we're talking about the agility to run VMware in 3 different clouds to get the most high availability systems and leverage other things that each cloud provider has to offer, I said, now we're talking. So it's really about what job you're looking for. Now, for architects, you've got to focus on how the tech makes something more transformational. Now, a cloud engineer, by comparison, Elizabeth James, might need to focus on something deep in tech. A BGP configuration guide on the AWS cloud, for example. So you can see the architect might focus on how BGP works and why you need it to make your business high availability. And the cloud engineer may focus, let's talk about the tech, the idiosyncrasies of the tech, the optional transitive properties, non-transitive properties, the finite state machine, and get real geeky in there. So it's really about, Elizabeth James, what are you putting out there? What brand are you building? Your brand is what people are going to say about you when you're not in the room. So I ask you, what brand do you want to build? If you want to build the brand of an architect, and Elizabeth James, I think I know you, because I see you around here a lot, and I remember you asking the architect questions. So Elizabeth James, those questions will be based upon how does the tech impact a business's performance? What are the advantages of this tech? The strengths, weaknesses of the tech? How do they integrate in the technology ecosystem? What business processes can they improve? And how, for example, we can make businesses better. What we don't want to ever do is, like, there's some company that after I've been telling my students to blog, decided to make their students blog, and they're doing what I consider nonsense. Hey, I set up a web server on Linux. Now, that's not something for anybody to write a blog about, because here's how you do it. Sudo apt install Apache or HTTP, I can't remember which one it is, or yum install Apache. It's like that simple. So I wouldn't be making a three-page blog on a one line of configuration. Especially, I wouldn't write things on configuration for the following reasons. Nobody in their right mind is going to go to somebody's blog to learn configuration. They're going to go to the manufacturer's documentation. So if an engineer wants to write how to do configuration here, what it needs to be is explaining the tech and why the tech works and how the tech works, and then how to configure it on, say, a Cisco router, which isn't going to change that much, a Juniper router, and then how all these things go implement and integrate into the whole solution. So it explains the tech, and then it shows the tech, not just how to configure the tech. Good question. Cameron LeGrund, thank you, Mike. I'm happy to have you as an instructor. Your wisdom on these topics is invaluable. Cameron, I'm happy to have you as a student. I'm thrilled to work with you in any way I can. Thank you. Question, we can go to the next one. And if you've got some questions, please ask it. And you're real quiet. There's 34 of you. I see very few questions coming in. So I've allocated a little bit more time today. So if you got some questions, ask them while I can, because, typically after this, people send me 100 messages on LinkedIn. And, I don't have the opportunity to be dealing with private messages, which is why I'm here. I want to help you all get hired. E-money gets in. I'm studying for the SAA and the CISSP. That's great, E-money gets in, but make sure you actually study for the job you want in addition to just certifications. But great start. Thank you for answering another question. Do I think the professional level search, such as AWS, will provide value to us as architects? Absolutely not. And I still think you should get one because it'll assist you getting an interview, though EAO Vision, I get people hired with 0 cloud certifications every day. Here's what a certification is: the name of a service and how to configure that service. Here's what architects do: design, present, and sell. So there's 0 value to the architect in these certifications. They are 100% irrelevant. Now, the other problem with these certifications, EAO Vision, is they teach really artificial nonsense. They'll teach you to secure your systems with WAF and Shield. But guess what? You're not going to be using AWS WAF because it's not adaptive, and all enterprises, for the most part, are going to be using next-generation firewalls. So the things that you're taught in the certification don't make sense. In a single certification, they try and tell you, which is the biggest lie in the world, and every certification provider does it, we can build high availability on a single cloud. Well, you can't, because a single cloud is a single point of failure. Cloud has a network problem, a control plane problem gets hacked, poof, the entire cloud's down. We've been seeing almost every cloud go down every year. No cloud has been able to deliver high availability, no matter how many availability zones and regions people have used in the last few years. Now, next is in the cloud, and in your course, in a cloud thing, they'll give you artificial things like teaching you how to design on a single content delivery network. CloudFront, right? I love CloudFront. It's a great content delivery network. But what if I told you AWS doesn't even use it themselves as a primary content delivery network? They're using Fastly, and they're also using Akamai. And, I can show you right now, if you guys actually desire, that literally speaking, when they're showing what they're using and they're describing what they're using, bear with me a second. I'm going to try and I'll have Chris from my team actually share this window with you. So, Chris, if you want to share this window, in your certification, they'll teach you how to design a high availability system on CloudFront. But the reality is CloudFront itself is a single point of failure, because a single content delivery network is a single point of failure. Chris, can you share that element on my screen real quick? Okay, so you can see here, this was when it was a couple days ago, I wanted to see which content delivery network Amazon was using. And you'd think it's CloudFront, right? But it's not. You can see the first time I ran my NSLOOKUP command, we saw they were using Fastly as a content delivery network. Now, the second time, if you look at my NSLOOKUP, you can see that Amazon was using Akamai. No, neither one of them was actually the CloudFront content delivery network. Chris, you can remove that. I can come back on center screen. So what you can see is what's taught in that certification is as follows: things that Amazon won't even do for themselves. And it's not that the certification's bad. We have to look at the goal of certifications. The goal of certifications is to get you all excited about a vendor certification, so you desire to sell their stuff. But the reality is, most of what's taught in these certifications is invalid. In a certification, they'll teach you about DynamoDB and why you should use it as this magical NoSQL database. I'm going to tell you right now, DynamoDB is an exceptionally good NoSQL database that I can't use almost ever. Wait, I said it's exceptionally good, but I can't use it almost ever? Here's the reason. 80+% of customers need to use more than one cloud and are using more than one cloud. And the second I use DynamoDB, I can't. Now I can use Apache Cassandra or MongoDB. So pretty much, employers desire experience, but you can easily get hired if you're competent. And the reason is they want to know that you don't try and do what's taught in your certification exam. And it's not an Amazon certifications look. I remember when I worked on Wall Street, I remember we had a massive outage which cost about $10 million in about 3 minutes. And when I fixed the outage in those days, when I was a really senior engineer, I actually looked on the network. And when I looked at the network, I said, oh my God, this is exactly what's on my CCIE exam. Apparently someone had gotten a copy of the CCIE exam and they tried to do it on a production network. Now, what the person didn't know is what's taught in the CCIE exam was designed not to work. They gave you a scenario that was designed not to work, and they wanted to know that you had the wisdom and capabilities to fix the broken things that they asked you. So the key is certification teach you the skills that aren't related to your career as an architect. Because a certification, it teaches you the name of the service and how to configure that service. Now, as architects, we don't use those names of the services with our customers, because the second I call a virtual machine, I'll ask the compute cloud in front of my customer, they laugh me out of the office and I'm fired. And the reason they laugh me out of the office and I'm fired is the following. When I deal with a customer as an architect, they need to know that I'm a trusted advisor. And they need to know that they understand me and trust me. And if I say, let's use this really cool Elastic Compute Cloud instance, I'm laughed out of the room. Now, if I called it a compute engine instance, which is a Google term, they wouldn't like it either. Or if I called it an Azure virtual machine, they wouldn't like it either. But if I said it's a virtual machine, the customers would understand me. So when it comes to being an architect, it's getting rid of all those fancy names, which is exactly what the whole certification is about. Now, the next part of why the certification is so irrelevant is there's no part of that certification that teaches you system design and what parts go together. There's no part of any of these certifications which teach you the relevant partners you're going to be using, the next generation firewalls, the intrusion detection positions, for those kind of things. Now, next, what's actually going on is as follows. The architect doesn't cover the business acumen. In fact, they'll tell you a shift from the cloud is, when they call it capital expenditures to capital expenditures, and they'll act like that's good. But that could be good to some organizations, or it could bankrupt other organizations based upon their capital structures and their weighted average cost of capital. And there's no concept of these business acumen components in there. Now, while these silly solution architect certifications are teaching names of service and how to configuring, they're not teaching you system design, how to present to the customer, how to sell to the customer, how to be relevant to the CEO versus CFO versus CTO versus CIO. They're not telling you how to lead a team of 50 cloud engineers that's going to do your proof of concept. And they're not teaching you anything. So I still recommend you get one to help you get an interview, but understand that it has no relevancy to our jobs whatsoever. That's why I've got people like Del Rabat that are getting hired with no cloud certs. And Robert Welch, who just got a great cloud security architect job, and I know exactly how great his job was. His only certification was a cloud practitioner, but he knew security and design and communicated and presented well. So still do the certification. They don't really offer you any benefits, but they will help you get an interview, which we view as a benefit, assuming you do the right branding along with it, and you don't do things like put cloud architect, cloud engineer on your resume or LinkedIn profile, and you really, really show exactly what you're capable of doing. Good question. Time for a few more questions, Chris. After I get those certs, will you be able to make a minimum? I don't think you'll be able to make anything by just getting those certifications, other than holding them on your wall. I think you need to get trained for the job even when he gets in to get your certification. I say this every day, I'm going to say it again. you will never get hired for doing certifications. Now, the exception is the Cisco Certified Internet Expert, because you've got to read about 75,000 pages of reading to get to the certification. But I don't believe you or anyone, if you had a CISSP, a CISM, an offensive security professional, a CEH master, and the AWS Certified Solution Architect professional, if you don't actually train for these roles and get knowledge outside of certifications and focus on those other skills, will get you any job. So my recommendation is you stop wasting your time worrying about certifications and you actually train for the job you want. How do you secure an enterprise? I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to be in your CISSP. There'll be bitty components of it, but it's going to be too high level and topical for you to get a job. What's covered in a Certified Solution Architect Professional is too basic for anything. Anything. So what I ask you is, what job do you want e-money gets on, and I'll tell you how to do that. But you will never get what you need to out of just doing certifications. I hate saying it. Now, e-money gets in, many years ago, certifications were more valuable. Many years ago. And here's the reason. Right now, you got all these silly courses on Udemy where the people teaching it don't even know the material themselves, and they're teaching completely irrelevant things. It used to be when you take a course, it would cost you $10,000 for the week, and people would help you. So kind of keep that. But the nonsense that's on Udemy, that's not going to get you hired for any professional job. Great way to learn gardening, maybe how to cook, but not going to get you hired for anything. So the next thing that we need to deal with is, the following is, what job do you want? And what are those skills? Now you have a CISSP, which is a very good, simple security exam. I passed it in 5 days prior to ever working in security, because I knew networking. So the key is, what job do you want? But it's never going to come out of a certification. It's going to come out of knowledge. If you tell me the exact job you want, I'll tell you there. But no certification is going to ever get you a job in and of itself. And I definitely recommend staying the heck off of Udemy to try and learn anything, because it's going to be taught by people that have never really had the job or known the jobs. So 20 years ago, I spent $40,000 on certifications. I'm not joking. And this was the beginning of my how to get hired career. I spent $5,000 on a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. I was MCP certified and MCSC certified. I became a CCNA. I took a 10-day, $11,000 CCNP boot camp for the Cisco Certified Network Professional. I had a CCDA, Cisco Certified Design Associate, and a Cisco Certified Design Professional. And that was the days before these silly Udemy courses came out there, and the ability to pay people to take the exam for you came out there, and these brain dumps that you can go where you get a copy of the exam. And I applied for jobs, and every manager said, Mike, I don't care about your certifications. I care about your ability to do the job. And I interviewed 50 recruiters, and e-money gets in. I've interviewed thousands of hiring managers and recruiters, and every single one of them says to me, I don't care about certifications. I care, can someone do the job? So e-money gets in. If you want to be a cloud security architect, I'll make sure you learn the following. Make sure you learn how to build a business case, and either take our course or go get an MBA. It's your options. It's not going to be covered in the certification. Make sure you understand how to give a presentation to a 5,000 person audience, because you're going to be doing that as a cloud security architect. Make sure you know how to build a team of 50 people and lead the team. Make sure you can sell $50 million of firewalls and security solutions as an architect, which means you need to learn how to sell. Now, make sure your emotional intelligence is sky high, because you're going to need it to be able to do this. Make sure you get some CXO relevancy training so you can convince the CEO, the CISO, the CIO, the CTO that your design is what they need. And again, none of this is going to be covered in certification. None of it. Now, how do you write to a C-level executive is very different how you write to the management, which is very different than how you write to the engineering team. You're going to have to write to all three. So you're going to need some training in that. I mean, I provided our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, but to be fair, probably have $10,000 training just on that. And that's what it takes. Now, that's just the beginning of these things. Now, next, it's going to be on design, and none of these certifications cover design. And that's why, they're only part of it. So how do you design the end-to-end security strategy? Not covered in many of these courses. How do you train your people so they don't fall for a phishing campaign or a social engineering campaign? That's not going to be covered in these things. How do you write a security policy? That to 5% will be covered in the CISSP. How do you determine the encryption strategy for the organization, the network strategy, what you're going to do on the network to lock it down? It's not covered in certifications. How do you micro-segment your systems? That's not going to be covered in certifications. So let's go to the next one. But I hope I answered your question so you can build the right plan. Don't plan on getting it this way. We can retrain you after you're done your certifications, or you can train with us. Let's go to the next one, Chris. You graduated from cybersecurity LSU, and you bagged the CCNA and CompTIA Security Plus. You like networking and you're confused on what kind of job you should be looking at. Well, I'd like to know what you like to do. And if I know what you like to do, then we can tell you the kinds of training that you're going to need to get there. For the most part, it's going to be much deeper than the CompTIA Security Plus. A CCNA is a very good intro to networking. I love it. So the key is what you actually like to do and want to do. And then we can build you a get hired plan. And that get hired plan are the following. My get hired plan is that we figure out what you want to do. So if you like networking, you could be a network engineer, a cloud network engineer, a network architect. If you like security, you could do offensive security, defensive security. What do you want to do? So offensive security is ethical hacking, where you break into systems. And defensive security is where you keep people from breaking into systems. Architecture, security, design. Network engineering is about putting the networks together to make these systems work. Network architecture is about network design. So what's interesting to you? Do you want to design systems? Or do you want to sell systems? Do you want to build systems? I'd love you to tell me that, in which case I can help you. Because that's really what it matters. That's truly what matters. E-money gets in. I talk down on certifications. No, I tell them they're not valid. And I have certifications that you won't even know because I don't put them on my resume, because if I do, they drop my salary by a few $100,000 a year. Now, why would I have ever done some of these certifications in the past? First, I spent 40 grand on them and didn't know better. Now, even yesterday when we had Alvin DaCosta on there, who also was a CCI like me, and I said, did you bother to renew your CCI? And he said, of course not. It's not going to help me. It holds me back because it makes me look like a techie. So yes, I will do certifications so I can see what's on them, so I can make sure my students, if they want to do them, can do this. But 20 years ago, I just didn't know better. I didn't know better, and I made the mistakes because I didn't know better. And I can tell you right now, I wasn't able to get jobs with any of these system things, and that's why I had to form my own system. I didn't know better. Now, I removed them from my resume because they hold me back. I didn't know better. And if you attend any of my webinars, I will tell you about the mistakes that I made 25 years ago, which was betting on certifications. Nobody cared and nobody hired me. No one. And I can tell you right now, no one will hire you just from getting certifications. Now, even when it gets in, if I tell you that 50 to 75% of the students we take in are people that took all those certification courses that are on Udemy. They spent 1 to 3 years learning all the stuff that's on certifications, and they keep going on interviews. And you know what the person tells them on an interview? Come back when you have more experience. Now, here's the thing. We're willing to hire somebody that has no experience. And if we interview someone and they're good, we hire them. And if they're bad, we don't hire them. Now, you've heard me say that if you get 2 certifications, it will help you get an interview, but it'll never help you get hired. So getting 2 of the right certifications will help you get an interview. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying don't get the 2 certifications. I'm saying they're not enough. I'm saying they don't even scratch the surface of what's necessary. So if I had a choice of training to be competent versus wasting my time on certifications, I'm going to train to be competent because I can get hired that way. Now, if I can train to be competent and get 1 to 2 certifications to help me get an interview, sure, that's great. But even then, only get the right ones and realize that it's maybe 5 to 10% of the skills that are necessary. And that other 90 to 95% are the skills I'm talking about training. So look, I don't mind you getting 2 certs. It's fine. I like to encourage my people to get 2 certs to help get an interview. But I make sure my people know they will never get hired by certifications, that there's nothing valid in those certifications, and do the certifications because it can help you get an interview. It can also slightly improve your brand because it creates an illusion of competency. We might think you know something which may make us willing to interview you. Interview 6,000 people like I have in my career, and you'll find no one that's certified actually knows anything unless they've gotten special training. So, how many tech jobs have you gotten to feel this way? Because you feel there's something to be said. How many tech jobs have you gotten? How many people have you gotten hired? And how many people have you trained to get $300,000 plus jobs like I have? And after, 20 years of experience in making people successful, I have those feelings because I've seen what works and I've seen what doesn't work. So in these tech things, you're not going to be learning the technical skills. I'm going to tell you that right now. There's nothing technical in the CISSP. None. And no once did you hear me say only soft skills. I told you that you needed to know, tell you that you needed to know next generation firewalls and how they work. And you're not going to get that in the certification. But if you went out there and read the documentation of Cisco's next generation firewalls and Checkpoint's next generation firewalls and Palo Alto's next generation firewalls, and then you read the relevant Internet Engineering Task Force RFCs, and then you actually learned about IP packets and what they look like, and you actually learned about how these firewalls can adapt in nature, now you know one part of it. You also heard me talk about VPN concentrators and the critical knowledge to know that. Again, that's not covered in your certification, but the people that make them will provide a lot of documentation and a lot of training in these things. Now, you also heard me talk about how to lock down operating systems, and that's not covered in certifications either, but you can train on how to get these things. Now, you also heard me talk about how to design a security policy for an end-to-end organization. That's not covered in certifications either, but you need to learn how to deal with it. What about frameworks like the NIST framework? That's not covered in certifications, but you can read that ugly framework and learn a little bit about it. Now, how do you lock down your end-to-end strategy? What's your encryption strategy? Not covered in certifications. What's your identity and access management strategy? That's not covered by any degrees and any certifications. The only place where you're going to learn a little bit about that is Microsoft Active Directory. And you're going to get that from Microsoft's documentation. So while somebody else is focused on learning the non-techno relevant tech skills in a certification, my people are learning these real tech skills because I teach them how to learn these tech skills. In fact, it's really funny. I had somebody knock out a CISSP in less than a week. And she said, well, I learned more about security in my first 2 weeks of training with you than it was covered in the whole CISSP exam. So I'm saying you need to get the tech skills, but they're not covered in certification. You need to get them elsewhere. In an AWS certification, they teach you about EC2. They don't really teach you what it is. They don't teach you how it works. They don't teach you why you need it in your systems, how to architect it, how to perform a student, none of it. None of it. So even though I provide technical training, I've got a lot of required reading in our program too. Required reading from the Internet Engineering Task Force, required reading from the IEEE on the specifications of Ethernet, for example, required reading from Cisco and Microsoft and VMware and all critical things. So e-money gets in. When we professionals work, we don't go to certification to learn stuff. We go to the people that are the market leaders. We figure out, we read through their documentation, what industry analysts are saying. We go to other real architects. So you can do it any way you want. I'm just saying once you're done your certifications, you're going to need training. And it doesn't have to be from me, but make sure you get the training. Because I already made the mistake of spending $40,000 on wasted certifications. In fact, when I actually started to reach the better level, my managers told me to take them off of my resume. And I said, what? I worked so hard for these. And they said, do you want to be thought of as the techie, or do you want to be thought of as the executive that can solve people's problems? What's your goal? And that's the only reason I'm here. so that other people don't waste their time on a failed path. You know, the average cloud architect earns $600 a day. A good one earns $1,200, $1,500, $1,800. If they're really, really good, easily can earn $1,200 a day. And I basically have two sets of people that have wasted their time and focused on all the wrong things, and people that learn the right things, like Daniel Bosu, who got hired without even a high school diploma, or Delroy Batt, who's got a job, and I asked him publicly, can you afford a brand new house, 2 Mercedes, and still save money at the end of the month with your new job that I helped you get? And I asked him, which cloud certs do you have? And he said, I have 0. I asked, did you apply for the job? And he said, no, Mike, I was part of your cloud architect career development program. It had such a big brand that people harassed me. If someone can save just 1 month, that can easily be $12,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 more that I added to their salary for their life. And if I can change someone in the right soft skills, communication skills, and leadership skills, well, somebody else is focused, wasted on their time on nonsense. I can typically add $50,000 to $100,000 a year to their salary, and over the course of 30 years, that's a $3 million. So where do you want to focus your time? You want to focus your time on the high value target, which is what managers care about, or do you want to focus your time on low value targets, which is what your certification providers care about? Choice is yours. I'm just telling you how I've made people successful over the last 2 decades. And I've never been able to make a single person successful ever with certifications. And I've made countless people successful. And every day we get somebody that's got a new 6-figure plus job. And some of our students get $280,000 and $287,000 jobs too upon graduation, just from our program, which is less than $1,000. And they're never getting there by just certifications. And also, while we're at it, when people have too many certifications and they want good jobs like cloud security architect jobs, note that they'll keep their certifications on and they'll get nothing. And when we remove the excess certifications and position them as an expert as opposed to a certification junkie, now the world comes to them and now they're cloud hired. So I just want everybody to know how to make the most money and how to get hired. So that's why I do what I do. So at this point, I'm going to end on that. You all know what to do and how to get hired. I've done everything I can to help you today. I must go to the next meeting. Join us tomorrow on the free How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar. It's completely free. I'll tell you everything you need to know and learn to get your first cloud architect job. If you haven't bought our exam guide on the AWS Certified Solution Architect, Associate, and Professional.
Bought?
I'm sorry. If you haven't downloaded our completely free exam guide on the AWS Certified Solution Architect, Associate, and Professional, realize our book is written differently. It's not about the name of the service and how to configure that service. It's about how these systems work. And to some degree, we'll even talk about the underlying technology. So you don't just get the certification experience. Follow us on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you'll be given access to free books, free webinars. And if you're trying to get your first cloud architect job or your first cloud security architect job, we've got the best program out there. Our students get hired. I know it's the best because even AWS has sent people to our class to tell our class about why they like our program so much. Chris and I get on the phone with executives at other companies saying, I interviewed one of your people, but they didn't accept the job. They went somewhere else. So I want more of your graduates. Can you send us more of your students? And we speak to more hiring managers and recruiters than anybody can imagine. I've done so for 20 plus years. And here's the reason why. In order to get hired, you need to know what those hiring managers want and be exactly what they want. And that's what we do. We prepare you to get hired based upon what hiring managers want, not what people think they want, not what certification providers try to sell you and waste your time, effort, and money. I want to get you hired. I came out of retirement to get you hired. I don't need to work. I'm here exclusively to make sure you guys know how to get the best jobs at the highest pay. Give me a cloud hired, everybody, and I'll see many of you in the completely free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar tomorrow.